This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Worf gets a backstory.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that will die an honorable, glorious death in battle.
Excellent.
I'm Skep, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi!
And this week it is, it's a weird one for me because I think of this as the first appearance of the Klingons because that's the order in which I encountered Star Trek. Mm-hmm. Even though these Klingons, like obviously Klingons showed up really early, original series, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a sort of errand of mercy.
Even these more modern Klingons showed up in the movie. Like, they were created specifically for Star Trek the Motion Picture. So, having my memory of, like, this is the first time you encounter Klingons, is like, this is the first TNG Klingons, even though Worf's been here. So, like, it's all just confused in my mind.
This is, OG Klingons, but it's also the first time in this, but also in your head, but not in the total of Star Trek, and yeah, there's wires crossed everywhere. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into it, but this is definitely when we have the first TNG version Klingons, which is the Klingons after the events of Undiscovered Country, where they have sort of a central conflict of being. Mm-hmm. This is peacetime Klingons, which is an interesting concept that they keep exploring in Next Gen.
Yes, it's this is the initial grounding of our view of Klingons during this era that will last all the way through the DS9 era, and I suppose a bit beyond with Lower Decks. Yeah.
So this is going to be a fairly quick intro because this is Heart of Glory, the Klingon episode, the first Klingon episode. It interestingly solidifies a lot of TNG Klingon culture that sticks around. It's not one of those, like, the Ferengi, and then we don't see them again for ages, and then they're completely different.
Which, maybe there was some shenanigans going on early Ferengi, and this is now the actual legit Ferengi. Now, the Klingons are going to be fairly consistent, right down to the sort of divisions in their culture and their sort of coming to terms with, I guess, living in this century.
So this was written by Herbert Wright and D.C. Fontana. The reason that we're covering this quickly is because we've heard of both of them before. D.C. Fontana, we've talked about a dozen times because she has just been one of the core Star Trek writers since the beginning.
Indeed. And
then, of course, we talked about Herbert Wright recently because he's the father of the Ferengi. Mm-hmm. Wrote the Ferengi episodes.
I also believe Maurice Hurley did the teleplay specifically, so there's also some stuff coming in from that end of things as well.
Yeah, and there was a weird quote that I couldn't quite figure out. So Maurice Hurley said that Heart of Glory was the closest experience he had to the show to directly place his own personal philosophy into a script, which, is your own personal philosophy to die gloriously for the Empire? What does that mean?
For the glory of the Empire! But you don't live in an empire. I don't care! But yeah, so, Maurice has been a writer we've also mentioned previously, so...
Alright, so guest stars, we've only got a handful, because it's a bottle episode. We've got...
one of them dies.
Yes, very early.
Yes, okay, you just kind of lay there, right?
Got Van Armstrong playing Chorus. He is one of the best-known Star Trek guest stars. This is his first appearance, but he goes on to play 12 different characters across 4 series.
Yes, I guess most notably being Maxwell Forrest in Enterprise, but also showing... Yes, our Admiral... It's Forrest. All right. Well, do we have any others? No. But also, a whole bunch of folks in Voyager, in the, from early on all the way to, the last episode. He played Korath, the Klingon, in the last episode.
Yeah, he was he was another Klingon. He's one of the Vidians, because you can't see who's who under all that makeup. He also plays like 4 other aliens in Enterprise in heavy makeup. It's just everywhere.
Alpha Hirogen Telik Ramor, who I believe is a Romulan, and Lancer, also known as 2 of 9. And he had a few roles in Deep Space Nine as well.
Yep. Outside of this, he also was in other sci-fi related TV shows, like everyone who was ever in Star Trek was. The one that I found just funny was he once played Fred Trump in an episode of Quantum Leap.
Oh my. That's awkward.
I wonder what he was up to.
Yes.
Now we have Charles Heyman playing Conmel. The Klingon name's just so weird. He was on a lot of guest roles in the 80s, like on A-Team and Dukes of Hazzard, etc. He was also on several TV miniseries and commercials and other things in the 80s, 90s era.
And last acting role, Lucy Knows Love. I've never heard of that in 2013.
That sounds weird. I don't want to look that up. I don't know what's going to pop up from that.
It's like, is this like a weird I Love Lucy spinoff? What?
David Foreman is playing Kinneara. I freaking hate apostrophe names, man. Kinneara.
Something like that. Sure.
He is best known for a reoccurring role on Matlock as Lieutenant Bob Brooks. He was already a well-known TV actor by the time he was in Star Trek on things like Hill Street Blues, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, things like that.
Yeah, I believe this is his only Star Trek role, but he was in Generations, the TV series.
What is that? What is that? Why am I blanking on whatever the heck that is?
It was 1990-ish. Yeah. I only notice it because it's like Star Trek Next Generation, Star Trek Generations the TV show. This has nothing to do with Star Trek other than actors that are shared over sometimes.
Right. Then also Robert Bauer plays Kunivas. I'm not sure if they say his name in this episode. Kunivas. Anyway,
that guy.
He's dead. He's dead the entire episode. But despite needing to only play a dead body, he's got a lot of TV credits from the 80s. He's also a professional drummer, and he appeared in the Spinal Tap movie.
Oh, nice. He's also a bit of a producer. Things like Scotch and Milk, Nosebleed, Short, Baby, 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 and Dinner with Dawn.
It's the sequel to My Dinner with Andre.
Maybe. Oh, he's also on. Played Hook on Sabrina the Teenage Witch.
Hook. I don't.
Yes, Hook.
I've watched all of Sabrina the Teenage Witch twice. I don't remember a character named Hook. But okay.
Sabrina and the Pirates.
I didn't. Yeah. What? Okay. Never mind. I'll figure it out later.
Maybe it's one of those episodes that was just so like head scratcher they just blocked it out of your memory.
I don't remember Pirates. I mean, I was big into Sabrina. I've watched the whole series like 2 times. I do not remember Pirates for the life of me. Anyway.
Do we have pirates in this episode?
Don't think so. I mean, sort of. Guess it depends how you define the Klingons in this. Like one could define them as such, yes. Well, it depends on your definition of pirates.
Well, they at least claim that there's pirates.
I mean, they're kind of like, in this, they're terrorists.
Yeah.
But depending on who you talked to during the, golden age of piracy, they were just terrorists. They're what we would call terrorists now.
Yeah, they're sinking our ships, killing our people. Like, they're raiding our dudes. What's going on?
Yeah. Some of them did it after they were supposed to, That's when you hit the piracy part instead of the privateer part. That's the distinction.
Like, all right, so they're taking our stuff, but leave us alive. Hooray, privateers. If they murdered us, piracy.
No, it was more, you have a mandate from the King of England to take out Spanish shipping lanes. Then England and Spain reach a peace deal, and they go, hey, stop taking out Spanish shipping lanes. They go, are you crazy? I'm pulling down $6,000 a month here.
This is a sweet gig. Come on. Come at me, bro.
Yep. What are you going to do? You're on the literal other side of the world.
Yeah, so I'm going to go hide out in Baja, California now or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. California is a bit of a way over from there. Wouldn't you have to go around South America to get to that?
Oh, yeah. They never think to look for you there.
I know, that's a ways. You're in the completely wrong ocean. Anyway.
Arr! Avast me, mateys.
Okay, yeah, now let's just go watch the Ice Pirates and continue instead of this. It's fine. It's good. First pirate-themed sci-fi thing that popped into my head. Treasure Planet, I guess? There we go.
That could work, too. There is that one two-parter later in the TNG era where there's technically some pirates.
Yeah, sort of. The Gambit.
Yes, in that one, Picard dies officially.
Yeah. Okay, that's enough.
Spoilers.
People didn't come here to listen to. People probably did come here to listen to us be stupid, because I don't think we're bringing much else to the table at this point.
Whee!
No, the Enterprise is responding to a disturbance near the neutral zone. There's no reports of ships in that area, so they could be arriving to find anything, though it's probably a ship, one would imagine.
Yeah. Although, the neutral zone is also ground zero for like a third of the anomalies, so,
Yeah, maybe that's why it's the neutral zone. It's like no one wants to live here.
So apparently we've noticed that there's a bit of territory between the Romulans and the Federation that no one just generally wants to, live in. Maybe we could just, turn that into a neutral zone. How about that? Well, why don't they want to live there? Because it's really spooky.
So what they find when they get there is evidence of a battle and a disabled Tellarian transport. They find intermittent life signs aboard because they're too close to the engines to read what's happening. They're near some radiation or something.
Yeah, plot radiation to prevent you from beaming in or detecting what's up.
Yeah, radiation seems to mess with all of their shit.
Yes, except when it doesn't. Yeah.
So they send an away team on board with Riker, Geordi, and Data. They also try out the new toy, the Visual Acuity Transmitter, which is a thingy that connects Geordi's visor to the view screen.
Yeah, this actually seems like a fun sort of toy to have, allow people on the bridge to sort of keep tabs of what's going on in away teams and all sorts of that. Sure, you have to deal with the false color stuff there, but whatever. Once you get kind of used to it, it's like, all right.
Yeah, they could do something interesting. So they turn on the VAT thing, which sends a POV shot to the bridge, which is just visual noise.
Yes. All right, so there's some blobs here. That kind of looks like a wall, and I don't know what that is, but it could be Riker. It could be, a salt monster. You never know.
They spend a long time talking about this. They even have some stuff that creates plot problems later, which is why they never talk about this again. He looks at Data and goes like, "Who's that?" It's like, "That's Data." It's like, "But he has a weird aura around him at all times." It's like, "Well, yeah, he's a robot. What do you want?"
This is going to be important for later. Actually, no, it's not actually. Though I will argue that maybe some of the other stuff that makes other androids undetectable makes them also undetectable to Geordi. Or alternatively, Geordi starts seeing that weird aura around other random people, and it's like, well, I don't think they're an android. Maybe it's just some people have that, But he's actually just surrounded by androids.
Maybe he's just a privacy advocate. It's like, if they don't want to say they're an android, it's not on me.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So they spend so long talking about it. There's even this is the sparkly music. They beam over to what is obviously a nearly broken down ship with steam, bits of crap everywhere. The whole thing's falling apart. They play that Star Trek sparkly look at the wonder music because we're looking through Geordi's visor.
This is amazing. It's like I can see all sorts of stuff, like the ship falling apart right around you guys.
Yeah.
Wowzers.
I can see colors the like of which humanity has never seen.
Picard, maybe you should just get some LSD. I don't know.
Yeah. And then eventually Riker has to remind them that they are in fact on a boat that's about to explode. So
it's like,
maybe we should get on with stuff.
Hopefully this farting around hasn't, given us a ticking clock that's going to almost get everyone killed.
Geordi finds a microfixture in the hull, which gives them about 5 minutes before the ship explodes. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Maybe we shouldn't have spent 10 minutes futzing around with the visor thingy. They head to engineering where the engine's giving off too much heat and radiation, so Data has to go ahead because, he's an android. It's barely worth mentioning all of that because it takes him about 10 seconds to go and then ask Geordi and Riker to join him.
I have navigated away through the radiation and fog cloud here.
Mm-hmm. They force open a stuck door and find 3 Klingons, one of whom is knocked out.
Yes. So really, 2 Klingons and a load.
The Klingons insist on carrying their companion as they all run. The ship's about to explode. They need to get away from engineering to transport out because, plot radiation. And then they get to a blocked hallway. The transporter's not working until the last second when it does. And then the ship explodes.
Now, imagine if this was how all of them died. Just like near the end of the first season, a bunch of the main cast dies trying to save some random Klingons.
Yeah, I mean, don't give them ideas. That's going to be like... That's what they do in modern TV. Just like, oh my god, shock factor. You didn't think we'd kill off a character in a dumb way, did you? We're not going to do that till later. So once on board, they take the Klingons into sickbay. Picard goes to meet them. Worf asks to join because Klingons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he doesn't get to hang out with Klingons that often, Yeah.
So the Klingons, who are Chorus and Con-Mel, are obviously surprised to see Worf, but don't really mention it yet. Picard questions them as to what they're doing on the freighter. Chorus tells them that they were passengers, and when they were aboard, they were attacked by Ferengi. But the Ferengi were using Klingon weapons for some reason. Don't look into that too much.
Wait.
That's why they didn't read any Ferengi weapons. Normal stuff.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Wait, have the Ferengi have taken up a practice of conning other people into like giving them hardware and things like that, and slowly replacing all the systems in their ship, so it's like a weird mishmash of all sorts of other different species tech?
I mean, that if they had done the thing that they were thinking of with the Ferengi, this is the anti-Federation. That would have been an interesting thing to do. It's like, these are raiders, scavengers, entrepreneurial people. They're going to scam anyone they can, steal anything they can, do anything they can to get an amalgamation of technology and things instead of the Federation's cooperation. And that makes them about as powerful because they, have a Romulan freighter that they've outfitted with Federation shields and Klingon weapons. Yeah,
so it's unpredictable because you don't know how all these things are going to work in a tactical situation. So it could be potentially highly dangerous.
And then it's impossible to track them down because you're like, well, this is a, Romulan warp signature. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But no, they just made them the Ferengi, the weird ultra-capitalist goblins.
And they used this actual good idea for the Packlids.
Yeah. Who, I don't know, they also don't know what to do with.
I think that's kind of why they used them in Lower Decks, other than for the obvious joke. It's like, what do you even do with a species like this? We'll make them a running joke, and we'll maybe figure out some way to give them subtlety later.
Except I liked the Packlids in Lower Decks, but the whole thing with them is that they were way smarter than they sound like to humans. Like, they have they have a weird language that makes them sound dumb to us, and that's why everyone's constantly underestimating them. In Lower Decks, they're just stupid.
Yes.
So anyway, the Klingons say that they asked to take control of the freighter when the Ferengi attacked. They lured the Ferengi into lowering their shields and then destroyed them when they tried to bring aboard a boarding party. So, everyone can tell this makes no sense at all, but Chorus avoids questions by saying he needs to rest.
So I'm tired. My great Klingon warriorness has been spent for today. I'm out, guys. Bye.
So Worf shows the Klingons to their quarters while Dr. Crusher operates on the injured Klingon. Chorus and Conmel make food as soon as they get there and sit down with Worf to insult him, mostly to see if they can get him angry.
It's kind of a Klingon thing, I suppose. Yeah.
They're surprised to see a Klingon in Starfleet because Worf's the only Klingon in Starfleet as far as anyone's aware, which they should know. They keep saying, like, as far as I'm aware. It's like, you have records. You're in the military, dude. This is like they write down when you sneeze.
Yes. So, this is the future. So you could also like set up notifications, like if any other Klingons joins up, give me an email. Okay.
So they are interrupted by Picard informing them that their comrade in sickbay is dying. The two Klingons and Worf arrive. They look into the dying man's eyes and then begin to scream into the sky.
As you do.
When it's over, they say that the body isn't important. It's just an empty shell. You may dispose of it. Get rid of this thing.
Yeah, just put it back in the replicators and recycle it. There we go.
And the whole thing apparently is just like they're warning the afterlife that a Klingon warrior is on their way.
Stovo Core's getting another guy.
It's kind of badass. I like it.
Yeah.
After Conmel laments that their companion was not killed by an enemy, leading Worf to ask what happened because you told me you were fighting an enemy. So.
Yeah. We had a deal with the Fringy. You're not going to buy that, are you?
Yeah. But they say, we will tell you what's really going on if you tell us your backstory. Haha.
Oh, well, okay.
This is such a this is an awkward D&D group. And it's like, oh, what's going on here? It's like, well, I will tell you if you reveal your dark past that you wrote 4 pages of.
Well, says I as I pull out my 4 pages.
So as it turns out, Worf was the only survivor of an attack on a Klingon outpost at Khitomer. As a child, he was found by a Federation officer who took him into his home on a farming colony to be raised among humans. He has a foster brother who also joined Starfleet. Worf thrived in Starfleet, but the brother dropped out and went home. If he swore revenge on the Romulans, this is a classic. Yes. My parents were killed. I was raised in a farming village where I practiced every day so I could one day take revenge on the people who killed my family.
I practiced the blade. Which one? We'll decide that later. Well, this does establish that Worf has a half-brother, so that will be important for an episode randomly later.
Way later. Yeah. So Chorus sympathizes because Worf's a warrior and living amongst prey, as he calls humans.
Oh, they do pray. Oh, you mean like pray? Oh, okay.
Yeah. He must feel the urge to run, hunt, and fight, but has to control the core of his being to fit in with humans, and despite this, has thrived.
I have mastered myself. You guys should learn some of that.
Yeah. This is what, to Chorus, they are fighting against. An alliance with the Federation has made them all weak, and peace is slowly killing them and eating away at who they are as Klingons. And they took the freighter and the crew to go do their own thing on their own planet where they could live however they wanted.
With blackjack and hookers.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. They wanted to, basically restart the, quote, old ways of the Klingons where they just go around and fight people and conquer stuff, and you're just going to assume everyone's going to be okay with this if you just sort of leave. Got it. Okay.
So a Klingon cruiser was sent after them, and they had to destroy it. They're Klingon brothers, But it was a battle, so it's fine, right? Because they're Klingon.
Yeah. Yeah, dying glorious battle, it's fine.
Worf starts showing them around the ship, even after finding out that they are very literal treasonous traitor people. Yeah, so interesting. They start talking about all the battles they could have with this awesome Federation ship.
Yeah, this place is pretty swanky. The Federation might be weak babies, but they got some cool toys that can totally level a planet if you like.
So on the bridge, they're all talking about how they saw the Klingon death ritual and how they're the first non-Klingons to see such things, and apparently we know about it even though no one's seen it outside of the Klingon Empire somehow.
Well, no one's seen it outside the Klingon Empire on an episode of Star Trek yet. they just forget to mention that last bit.
But they now detect a approaching Klingon battlecruiser. They're hailed by Captain Chorus, who tells them that the 2 Klingons they have on board are wanted fugitives.
Well, dang.
Like, Worf knows.
Yeah, and Worf's like, yeah, they're totally like criminals or something like that. Whatever.
So Tasha takes the security team down to where Worf, Chorus, and Con Mel are wandering around the ship. Chorus tries to convince Worf to join them and take the ship. He mostly just stands there, looking between Tasha and Chorus, just waiting around.
It's like, you want me to do something? I'm not chief security yet. What?
Then a family comes out of the turbo lift and like, oh no, Chorus has grabbed a kid. And Tasha freaks out until he hands the girl to Worf and surrenders. And Worf goes, why were you worried? Klingons do not take hostages like cowards.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll have to remember this for later.
Also, I think I wrote this down wrong. The captain on the freighter is named Kanira, not Chorus. Chorus is this dude.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm getting my names mixed up.
Yeah, the weird name that we can't pronounce.
Kanira. It's got an apostrophe in it. So English doesn't have apostrophe words like this. So. And
the conlangs that I've created have a certain rule to them. That's not this.
So back on the bridge, they let Kanira know they've captured fugitives. Worf asks to address the captain and pleads that the 2 Klingons not be executed, but be let free on a hostile world where they can at least die with weapons in their hands.
Well, that does sound like a bit more badass death. Maybe I'll think about it. Nah.
Yeah, Kanira sympathizes, but he longs for a time before peace as well, etc. But his hands are tied because bureaucracy.
Yeah, he's like, my honor is that I'm going to serve honorably, and that means I'm going to follow the orders. So, hand him over.
In the brig, Chorus and Con Mel take apart a lot of pieces of their armor and some belts and things and make a weapon.
And it should be noted that one of the pieces they sort of quietly grabbed from their friend who died was apparently part of all this too.
Yeah. So between the 3 of them, they can make a functional disruptor. Well,
that's kind of clever. Yeah, they're kind of sneaky, aren't they? Maybe they're the rogues.
They also have some sort of other doodah that disables the force field, and they shoot their way out. The security officer kills Con Mel before being shot, leaving Chorus to run to engineering.
Well, seems we have ourselves a casualty. That sucks. Moving on.
Yeah. This is another one of those things where, like, the force fields look cool and futury. A door would have saved you a lot of trouble here.
Yes. Oh no, the Klingons are still behind the door. Okay. It's locked, right? Yeah, they're trying to shoot their way out, but we can kind of see the beam heating up the door. Should we call somebody?
So Chorus goes to engineering and holds the warp core hostage because he could shoot it at short range and destroy the ship.
Well, this seems like a major design flaw when you think about it.
Yeah, it seems like maybe you should have some shielding or something around this.
Yeah. Because, in DS9, the Defiant actually has a shield around its warp core. Part of that's to prevent the radiation from killing everyone, but,
So, he demands to talk to Worf, because he's the only one on the ship who he thinks will understand him. He asks Worf to take him to the battle bridge so they can take the drive section of the ship and cut bloody war across the galaxy.
Well, that does sound like fun, but that would require, breaking out the battle bridge set again, so we can't do that today.
Yeah, Worf refuses. Worf goes, oh, there is no Klingon in you. And Worf goes, yeah, maybe, and shoots him.
Worf's just like, I don't really care what you have to think anymore. You're going to be dead in a second. Zap.
He falls into a glass floor, which breaks in dramatic fashion. People are meant to walk on that.
Yes. So maybe this is a good thing because, it shows a structural flaw in the flooring here.
Yeah, engineering is just one safety hazard after another.
That's going to be true for quite a while.
So Worf does the death thing, screams to the heavens, etc. They call Kanira, whatever his name is. They call Apostrophe Man. to let him know that the fugitives have died. He asks how they died, and Worf tells him that they died well.
Oh, okay, then I don't have to worry about this. Just toss their bodies out the airlock later.
Yep, that's it. There we go.
Yep. End of episode.
Yeah. All right, so that's Heart of Glory, the Klingon episode.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
I generally kind of enjoy it, though it does really drag that first half.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, okay, cool that we're seeing the Geordi's visor stuff here, but we're spending so much time on it that is basically just, wow, look at the special effect we did.
Yeah, by the time they get to the ship, describe Geordi vision, do Geordi vision, and all go ooh and ah at Geordi vision, you're about 20 minutes into the episode.
Yes. It's like, well, I hope that we're going to have room for, a plot. And, somehow we kind of do. It's a pretty simple plot, but it's there.
Yeah, the plot's a bit simple. It's a fun character study. Mm-hmm. I feel like of all the things that Star Trek looks at, the Klingons are kind of this weird little thing. It's trying to introduce a culture that Americans don't have and explore a culture that Americans don't have, and is probably fictional in any regard for any culture.
Yeah.
Even though we try to assign it to various cultures throughout history.
It is an attempt to be something fairly removed from the human experience, though there are obvious elements taken from bits and here and there, as well as, stuff that's been sort of inherited from the original series.
But one of the things that you inevitably hit up on when you're writing about this kind of, let's just say violent culture, is they wind up having an interesting discussion about American masculinity. Mm-hmm. Because they have a very interesting debate going between Chorus and Worf about the purpose of a warrior, which is like, what is the purpose of anger and violence in the modern world where it's arguably no longer necessary? Now, I'm going to say that when you're talking about masculinity and patriarchal expression, which are two separate things, like patriarchy and masculinity are linked, but they are not the same thing, and they too often get treated like the same thing. One is a system of control and organization that's been put on things. One's a preferred gender expression, and they're deeply intertwined, but they are not the same.
So an external versus internal sort of, structure here.
Well, one's a system, and the other one is a personal expression. Yes.
Yes. Though they do, inform each other.
Yes. So, fictionally, masculinity is very linked with violence. Like, this is not historically accurate or biologically accurate at all. But the idea is that men are more violent, and historically that has been used to, wage wars, protect communities, hunt, etc., etc. And that's deeply tied in with an American version of the masculine ideal.
You got to be strong so you can defend your country or home or whatever here. And if you don't got that, you're not man enough or something.
Yes, and that's completely fictional, but it's very tied into our ideas. Mm-hmm. The debate that they're setting up here is, what is the purpose of that kind of masculine violence in a modern world that arguably does not require violence to function anymore?
Yeah, when you have you've built a society, even the Klingon society at this point, where you have enough to go around, so there's not a scarcity of resources that demands this to be a thing, but it's still part of your culture. What gives?
So, Chorus is arguing that one should be fully allowed to express it, that hurting people is just part of their culture and world. One should be able to just engage with it however they want. And the problem is the people who want to change things and make peace, etc., etc. Chorus in this example is the conservative voice that's saying we shouldn't change anything, stuff was fine the way it was, and the fact that people are trying to change things is hurting me.
I'd go even a little further and say not just conservative, but like traditionalist, that things have changed and they want to change them back. So it's not necessarily conserving something that is presently, the status quo, but is sort of reverting to a previous state.
Worf is representing a different ideology, not necessarily progressive or wanting to change things, but arguing that one can still find a useful expression of the masculine by exhibiting control over the self. Like, you can find an expression of your own personal honor by trying to better yourself regardless of your personal feelings about everything else that's going on.
Yeah, in some ways, your biggest enemy is not, the person on the horizon there. It is your own inner demons or impulses or whatever you want to sort of, set as your sort of internal antagonist there. And so if you can overcome that to be the person that you want to be, that isn't necessarily just, giving into that side of you, then that is a worthy victory.
Yeah, there's a quote in here from Worf that's essentially, your true test as a warrior is not external but internal. Meaning it's not going out and fighting other people, it's being able to put your own self in order.
Indeed. No, I have heard quite a bit about various forms of Klingon honor, and this kind of, I guess, demonstrates the external versus internal sort of division there. That Worf is very much all of the internal honor sort of stuff there, while these guys they're showing up here are more of the external. That the only honor that really matters is what you can demonstrate to others. What you sort of view internally doesn't matter. While Worf's kind of the opposite there, that what's going on outside doesn't necessarily matter super much if you don't have that sort of internal consistency for yourself.
Well, it's something that we kind of hold in very high regard in our own culture, arguably damaging to various degrees depending on how it's implemented. But one of the things that we consider to be very important in modern American masculinity is this sort of confidence in the self. And even though we do not apply it particularly, it's something that we say is good. It's not something that we try to instill interestingly. Yeah. But that's kind of this thing. The one is very much external validation. Like, Chorus's entire thing is, we need to go wage bloody war, being externally validated by fighting people, other people being afraid of us, people seeing us do glorious things. Where Worf's philosophy is internal validation. I know that I am doing the best that I can. I know that I am holding myself to a higher standard than others might, and that is what is important to me.
Which, given their different upbringings, sort of becomes the inevitable, conclusion there, just terms of how Worf was, likely going to sort of, turn out in the end here. As someone who has, not much direct contact with the Klingon culture at this point, but has effectively learned plenty. He's having, that he was never really in a position to get that external validation in the first place. So what else does he got? Well, he still wants to be an honorable Klingon, so I'll judge myself from my own set of standards here.
Well, Worf's kind of an interesting one to look at in a modern thing. I don't know if you've heard of this. Have you heard that there's a masculinity crisis that we're having, apparently?
Oh, what's this all about?
So we're having, I don't know, both sides, like everyone's talking about this. Both sides of the debate are talking about it from various angles. But there's apparently a masculinity crisis, which is essentially, what do we do with the men now that we agree men are horrible?
Well, now is this the masculinity crisis that's the more recent start, or the one from the 50s, or the one from the 1910s, or going back to even the 1800s? I think I've seen articles about, men today are, need to be stronger or something like that.
Well, this is the flavors here. We have one thing that's like, oh, men are all weaklings and need to be stronger and whatever. But there's also a more nuanced discussion, especially in some feminist circles happening, which is patriarchy is instilling certain ideals in everyone that make us think of men and masculinity in a certain way. That way is in many ways inherently damaging to all people, men and women and others. Like, it is an inherently damaging way to exist.
It's encouraging folks to basically harm themselves and everyone around them.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff of encouraging violent behavior, encouraging the devaluing of emotions, a lot of stoicism, which good or bad depending on how used. And there's a bit of a debate in like how you reintegrate any of that. Like we have this whole like feminist idea in some feminist theory that men and masculinity are essentially a problem that we need to deal with, but that doesn't leave men with a lot of options being men, you know.
There's it's like, well, what if we redefine what masculinity is so it's not nearly as ridiculous as it has been.
But the thing that we wind up with is we tend to have this giant list, which I do not disagree with broadly, that there's a lot of ways in which masculinity is being manipulated and instilled in people in a very negative way. But when you just wind up with a giant list of stuff that's not good, and you don't have anything to replace it with, you do wind up in a bit of a problem. If you tell someone the way you're living is bad, stop it, and they go, okay, how should I live? And it's like, I don't know, just not like that.
Yeah, it's not super helpful. Having, there is, I guess, a general yes and sort of thing that's been that we've been kind of lacking here, and so I guess one of my favorite go-tos is like, be more like Mr. Rogers, or well, it's like he was a guy, and no one he sort of exuded a certain masculinity, but he was also quiet spoken and just like, let's do some cool stuff for the kids here.
I think that as a more traditional look at modern American masculinity, Worf is a very, very interesting person to examine as a character, because he embodies a lot of it. He's very strong. He recognizes violence as a key tool. He is absurdly obsessed with honor and stoicism and a lot of other things. But he embodies it in a way that works very, very well, both for him and for those that he interacts with. Until you get to DS9, where they just ruin the character outright. But in TNG, he recognizes that violence is a useful tool that is intrinsic to his being, but he also does not employ it randomly. He uses it when necessary, and he can employ it when necessary in a very controlled way, even though he enjoys it.
Yeah, it's almost like wisdom is something that he is, incorporated into his masculine ideal.
Yeah, and he has a certain controlled nature about him. He is a very stoic person, generally. But you also reveal through other interactions later on, he has an incredible emotional depth that he cultivates for himself. He just doesn't necessarily find it necessary to use that at all times. He is doing a job that requires him to separate his feelings out a little bit because he's working in the military in a security role most of the time.
Yeah.
So he doesn't always bring his feelings into things, but he has an incredible depth of feeling. Like, deep feeling and emotional exploration are very core to his being. He's incredibly emotional. He's incredibly spiritual. It just is not something that he brings into a lot of his interactions with people because it doesn't really matter externally.
Once again, he's kind of grown up in this sort of way of being, and so it doesn't mean he doesn't have it. It just makes it harder to see for those folks around him that are not keyed into the sort of way that he operates until they've gotten to know him quite a bit, and we as the viewers get to know him quite a bit over the course of the series.
Yeah, and he takes a certain amount of pride and pleasure and even like a certain matter of professional sensibility from being able to explore himself and his culture and his spiritual beliefs and emotions in that kind of way. So overall, he embodies a lot of what people would think of as very, very negative masculine traits. He's huge, he's violent, he's strong, but he also has a lot of things that we really, really value in people in general, like an incredible depth of emotion, caring, and empathy, and spiritual feeling.
I guess he's a good role model, and if you have sort of, I guess, internalized yourself as being this sort of large, powerful, and prone to violence sort of character, that there is, I guess, a way forward for you, even if you still sort of have that as part of your views of yourself then.
Well, I think that's the thing. See, even when we talk about it that way, one of the other parts of his character, I think, is also a really interesting exploration of how we have this sort of feminist masculinity crisis that we're trying to deal with now. Like, he was raised in a way where he knew his entire life that his presence was a danger to other people. Like, they have a thing later on where he knows that he is stronger than most humans, just generally.
Yes.
So he has to control himself all the time, or he's going to hurt people. And that is something that we now raise a lot of young men with the idea of, because, feminism, earlier feminism in the 60s and 70s, when we were coming up with some of these ideas, we had a certain view of patriarchal culture that wasn't being particularly challenged. That's where a lot of radical feminism came in, saying we need to challenge these patriarchal ideas because no one is. But anyone who was born after that has been raised in a culture in which these ideas have become, if not completely mainstream, at least a lot more accepted. Yes. So a lot of young men who grew up after the 70s, people who grew up in the mid 80s and 90s, grew up with the idea, with being instilled with some of these ideas of patriarchy and the idea that you as a man could instill violence and harm on other people.
Yeah, there's a reason I sometimes mention to folks that it's like, all right, so we've been interacting a lot online. I just sort of when I talk about this sort of interaction about in my real life sort of spaces here, I want you to also recognize that I kind of come off as a big scary guy just when I'm walking down the sidewalk, and that I've become aware that that's in sort of impacts random people's sort of first impressions of me. If I'm come into a room and I don't know anyone there, but I'm supposed to interact with them, also a similar sort of thing. And so recognizing how I sort of have this impact on folks, sort of informs my own behavior and how I sort of move forward to interact with them. Also it kind of helps that personality-wise I tend to be chill, so. So that does definitely sort of help, I guess, reduce people's stress if I'm in a social situation like that.
Well, I do think that the idea that you have with that, I'm also a very large man, and I also had a lot of temper control problems when I was in high school. In middle school and high school, I was fighting with people a lot. I had anger control issues. So I've also been raised in that kind of way of what you're doing is fairly dangerous to people, and you're a large person who makes people nervous.
I tended to seethe more.
It's a very damaging internal idea if you have to internalize the knowledge that you exist as a person are inherently dangerous. Anyone can do harm to anyone. It's just being a person. It's just being human.
Yes.
Having separated that out to you specifically can do a lot of harm, and you specifically need to deal with that where other people might not, that becomes an issue. And I think that the way that they've dealt with that in the character of Worf is very interesting, because, this one gets into a little bit of weirdness when you're dealing with things like aliens and stuff. He literally is stronger than other people. So yes. There is that. He could be more dangerous than others, but humans can hurt each other if you don't control your emotions too, especially when you're younger and you have more trouble controlling your emotions.
In fact, one of my, I guess, most potent memories was the one time I managed to impact a fellow's nose on the school bus that one time, my senior year of high school. I hadn't been in any fights for a number of years at that point, so it was a little surprising to everyone, including myself. And it was sort of like, well, I guess I need to remember this because wow, just sort of just a quick movement, and that's all it took for him to basically be done.
Mm-hmm. I think that you wind up with things like that, like people realize, like at some point you may realize how scary violence is, and you could internalize that as like, oh well, I have this capacity to do such horrible things. And that can lead people to this idea that violence in and of itself is just such an inherent wrong. But there's a debate there. Like, it's a philosophical concept that you can debate. I'm not trying to lay down a specific version of it. But you could say in a character like Worf, you need to control yourself. You are stronger than others. You have you could have trouble controlling your emotions. You could hurt people. Violence is always bad. But instead of that, you've taken this character and you've gone, yes, he can be violent. He comes from a culture, in fact, that reveres violence as an idea, but not random violence. He has incorporated his capacity to do violence into a tool that he can use when he wants to. And as a tool, it can be incredibly useful in certain situations, and he uses that to protect other people, to protect the values that he believes in his own society. And that's something that violence is used for fairly frequently. And
indeed,
saying that all violence is inherently wrong and all men are inherently violent and therefore has the capacity for this great harm and wrong is not letting us actually explore this idea. Like, what is it for? Is it useful? How can it be a useful thing? As a tool that one can employ, how can you view it differently than just as a flat-out evil action?
Though it's not one-to-one, going back to my ease of intimidating people, I have used that as a tool to help, friends of mine stay out of trouble themselves. That's like, oh, I need to go to, the situation here, and I don't know if people are going to be, antsy and potentially, trying to, push me around because I'm there. Would you come with me and sort of be this person has a friend here. They're not looking, they're not obviously not looking for a fight, so don't bring it to them sort of situation instead. It's just sort of being there, being that presence there that's not necessarily a direct threat, but a, assumed threat, I suppose you could say, that, this person here is, not necessarily, is, looks capable, so me as this external person am going to respond so that we're not going to actually be starting anything this time. That can be potentially useful, and it is a weird thing when it comes up. Hope that made sense.
I mean, that it's interesting because in certain theories of interaction, I'm not saying all. Feminism is a very complicated jumble of theories. But in certain theories, that form of intimidation is inherently violent, is a way that you were raised in a patriarchal system to embrace violence, and is therefore a negative thing to do, even though just being a large guy in a certain situation can de-escalate violence otherwise.
Indeed. So instead of there maybe being violence and my friend being hurt, nothing happens. I'd say nothing happening as the alternative is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a particularly complicated subject.
Yes.
But I do think that Worf is viewed as a masculine ideal is a very interesting concept because he's not randomly violent. He's not evil. He doesn't have a lot of these other traits that we would talk about when you look at a, masculine character. And especially since he became so popular, he's like he's obviously drawing inspiration from older works, but he is the archetypical alien stoic masculine character. Like, you can draw a direct line from him to Tilk on Stargate, and I'm forgetting my character names. There's a similar character on Farscape, and there was a similar character on Andromeda. Every sci-fi property after this has your big guy philosopher.
Yeah, I believe a Tyr on Andromeda, on Farscape. The guy with the blade, yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a gun. It's like a gun blade.
It's taken your idea of your, like, this is a trope concept of the big, strong guy who can take care of situations through strength. You also pair him with the philosopher, and you wind up with a very interesting character who can not only do violence, but examine the reasons that they would do violence.
Indeed. Is it better to strike now or to strike never? That is the sandwich. Wait, wrong heavy.
All right, that's more time than I meant to spend on that. So, yeah.
Well, I'd say it's time well spent overall. I guess what I was going to bring to it is kind of this, this little bit of stories I've shared myself here. That there are multiple different ways to sort of interrogate your own masculinity and try to turn it into something that's going to be useful for yourself, and and that is going to be going to help those around you. Not bring them down or threaten them or cause problems and things like that. So I guess in terms of moving forward, we all kind of have our own journeys on this sort of quest of self-understanding and questioning our own behaviors. But yeah, it's maybe a conversation that long running we should maybe come back to occasionally.
Oh, we will. Worf shows up a lot in these seasons. He's one of the main characters.
Exactly. How is it that we can learn to be better people, better guys by looking at Worf? Well, how?
Know that you can rip someone's spine out, but have the knowledge to know when you should rip someone's spine out.
Yes. Just randomly when you're going in the elevator and Riker's being kind of a boob, that's maybe not the time to do it. If you're performing spinal surgery, that might be a good time to do it, actually. But those are two different episodes we'll later look at. And one of them involved Worf's brother. Yeah. Anyway. So, I guess a little bit of trivia here I wanted to just kind of mention. The Klingon cruiser that showed up, the graphics there, guess where that's from?
Oh, I know where that's from, but I'm not going to spoil it. So it's more fun if I don't know. Where could that have been from?
Well, where have before this point Klingons shown up and then promptly gotten murdered by some sort of computer brain?
Yeah, they cut it before V'ger shows up and blows them out of the sky.
It's like, all right, well, good luck there, guys. Stay away from giant clouds.
Yeah, it's very, we talked about this a bit during the movie episodes, but the timeline is so confusing if you came to Star Trek a little bit later. I was too young to know when I was watching these at the time, but the crossover between when they were making Next Generation, when they were making all of the movies, means that the special effects are the same. They share some of the same sets. They reuse footage. Yep. It's a hot mess.
Indeed. The other bit of trivia I wanted to mention, that some of the wall structures and things like that from the freighter ended up being reused, but on Babylon 5.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I guess when we 10,000 years from now, when we get to Babylon 5, watch out for that. And that's all I got.
Okay, that's all that we had for general talking points. So I guess probably it's time
to point at something else.
It's time to get to the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show, where our various contestants have gotten a lot of points racked up here. And holy smokes, these Klingons really know how to boost their scores this week. So let's start handing out some prizes, and Gepwin, I hope you're ready for these. The first prize to hand out is the Awkward Cover Story prize, which goes to the visiting Klingons, because seriously, the Ferengi, they did this? Come on guys, give us a break. Now tell us what actually happened. What do they win, Gepwin?
Klingons win a Klingon time crystal, which we know they have later, so they can go back in time like 6 or 7 episodes to before we saw how pathetic and stupid the Ferengi actually are, back when they were still trying to build them up as villains. Because then it would have been like, oh, the Ferengi did this. Oh, the mysterious Ferengi. Who even knows? That's why their weapon signatures are weird. Instead of really the little jumpy goblin dudes. Them? Really?
Yeah, reorder the episodes and bam, suddenly the Ferengi are a major threat, or at least for a little bit longer. Our second prize is the Get On With It prize, which goes to Picard for slowing down the rescue so that almost everybody on the transport dies just because he likes to look at pretty lights or something like that. What does Picard win, Gepwin?
Picard gets a kaleidoscope, because just look at that. Here's Geordi Vision. It's like, oh my god, how do you make sense? Like, you learn, We'll get on with things, though. Enjoy.
Yeah, it just takes a little patience and, spending years sort of experiencing, sight like this, that you'll eventually figure it out, Picard. Would you like a visor too? No? Okay, moving on. The final prize is the Unsustainable Murder Cult, which also kind of goes to the traditionalist Klingons here, because really, they want to go and just murder people or stuff forever, I guess. So that's kind of what their interpretation of the old Klingon way kind of equates to at this point here. What do they win, Gepwin?
They do get their own stupid little moon. I think this could work for everyone. You take all the traditionalist Klingons, put them on a habitable planet, they fight each other to the death in honorable whatever glory. Everyone's happy.
And maybe to I guess maybe make sure, I suppose, make that moon praxis.
Yeah, just so that they will explode.
Yes. Anyway, on that perhaps a bit more murderous tone, that's all I got here for this week. Gepwin, go on and take us away.
Yes, thank you all for joining us while we talk about super masculine buff Klingons. I'm getting distracted. On the Galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! So, are you flexing now too?
Yeah, flex.
Excellent.
Just
keep flexing.
I've been lifting more. One of my friends gave me a weight set because he upgraded. Now I've been lifting, so I have actual muscles. This is one of the first times I've had actual real muscles in quite a while.
Excellent. I think the last time I had visible muscles, I was biking 2 miles a day. That was pretty weird. Also, there's radiation. Anyway.
How you turn
I'm not joking, actually.
Incredible Hulk.
I was spending a summer at a national lab, so,
After a lab experiment, now when he gets angry, he goes through an incredible transformation.
And it becomes physics-isics.
Right, so next time we have what is one of my favorite episodes of the first season. Not because it is good, but because it is stupid.
It's overall kind of fun and has some kind of weird humorous things going on at times, and including Depression era references. You know?
It's great. Yeah. It's also got Captain Geordi, which is one of my favorites. They don't let Geordi be captain enough.
Yes.
So it's got Captain Geordi. Geordi gets to shout down insubordination. It's amazing.
It's like, come on, guy, I'm doing a thing. I'm going to save the day. Now, just shut up and let me do my job. And okay, I guess I have to do that now.
It's also a very, very interesting one because it had a very confusing message for the time that it was put out. The message that they were trying to do for the era was actually kind of confused and didn't really work as a good metaphor. And it has become a much, much better metaphor the more into the future we have gone.
Sometimes, sci-fi experiences Z-Rust, where you got things that are just this looks kind of quaint, and this is not how the future turned out at all, but it kind of has its own style. This is sort of like the inverse. It's not about style, but it's about substance getting better over time.
Yeah. And it's just amazing. Also, the thingy in this is made out of a pantyhose egg, to just love. This is peak science fiction. This is amazing. This is a pantyhose egg from the drugstore asking questions about weapon automation. It's amazing.
Yeah, so if folks thought the some of the stuff in the Doctor Who episode recently was a bit silly, it's got nothing on this one.
Also, sad man, depressed hologram vendor.
He just wants to sell his stuff.
Weird exobotany that doesn't make any sense. Oh my god, it's got everything. It's got all the science fiction.
And it's a good adventure.
Yeah.
So make sure to tune in then. All right.
So next time we're hitting what's my favorite episode of the first season, personal favorite, called The Arsenal of Freedom.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, wanna buy a death ray? You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.